Hello everyone. So I think it's important to go ahead and acknowledge at the very start of today's video that the topic that we're going to be discussing is a point of frustration for many people in the Pathfinder 2e community, and that is the earn income rules. Earning income covers what your player characters do in between adventures, the kind of life that they live when they're not out solving mysteries or battling bandits. And earn income, on the surface, seems like it should be a relatively straightforward rule set, but when you dive into the rule set, you find that it gets complicated very quickly. It considers a wide array of different variables, from the level of the city that you're in to the level of the character that you're playing, and the particular proficiency that they have in whatever skill it is they're trying to roll. And then all of these variables can be modified by things like your skill feats, or your class feats, or maybe your ancestry and archetype feats. You can end up jumping all over the core rulebook from page to page and table to table, just trying to figure out what it is that your character is actually getting paid, and when you finally get to roll a dice, you end up needing to do some high school algebra to even figure out what your actual paycheck is going to be. Earn income feels like I'm doing my taxes! Oh my gosh. I figured it out! Paizo doesn't have an editing problem. They hired somebody from the IRS to write the earn income rules. It all makes sense now! Let's talk about the rules for earning income in Pathfinder 2e on this episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I'm the Local Disaster Tour Guide. That's right, I'm a storyteller who's probably going to need to pick up looting dragon layers as a side income if I want to have any hope of ever affording my son's college tuition. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome back to Storytelling in Pathfinder 2e, a series where we take a look at the tips, tricks, and advice that Paizo offers storytellers to help us be more successful at the gaming table. Now, this series is intended for storytellers of all skill levels from beginner to advanced, and even if Pathfinder 2e is not your preferred game, I still invite you to be part of the conversation, because studying a variety of games can often inspire us with ideas to bring back to our preferred game. So regardless of what you play or how long you've been playing, stick around. I hope that this conversation is beneficial to you. Today, we're going to be talking about the earn income activity in Pathfinder 2e, a rule set that seems like it should be simple on the surface, but that quickly becomes very complex when you dive into all of the nuances of this particular activity inside of the game. We have recently been talking about downtime mode, one of the three major modes of play in Pathfinder 2e, and the rules for the earn income activity fall squarely under downtime mode play. This is a classic example of what downtime mode should be and how it can influence your PCs. As I have previously alluded to, the rules for earning income can get a little complicated and a little messy. However, I do think some people have unfortunately made it more complicated than it needs to be, and it can be helpful to take a step back and look at the big picture to see how all of the pieces fit together. So, today we're going to talk about earning income, what it means for your player characters, how to set it up inside your game, and some of the different narrative points that it might affect for the stories that you're trying to tell. We'll also take a look at some of the other rules in Pathfinder 2e that build off of earn income, and we'll also cover some of the things that are specifically not part of earning income, and why Paizo keeps those concepts separate. But if you would like to help this YouTuber earn some income, then please do all of that cool YouTube stuff. that helps to feed the algorithm and send a little bit of ad revenue my way. Like the video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and please check out my free Discord and my Patreon, both of which are linked in the video description. Finally, and most importantly, don't forget to jump down into the comments section and leave your thoughts, your insights into this subject. I love to hear what you all have to say. As with any conversation in this series, I am going to be giving you some references if you would like to study this subject a little more in depth. The main rules for the Earn Income activity can be found in the Pathfinder 2e core rulebook from pages 236 to 238. In that section, you will find a very important table, table 412, which is an important reference for many of the things we're going to talk about today. One of the skills that builds very heavily on earned income is the rules for crafting, and those can be found on pages 243 and 244 of the core rulebook as well. Finally, in the core rulebook, if you want a little perspective on the earned income activity, you probably want to be familiar with the rules for cost of living, which can be found on page 294, along with a handy table, table 616, which covers the different, costs of living inside of the game. Outside of the core rulebook, you can find some more information on the earned income activity on pages 25 and 26 of the Gamemastery guide, including two more tables, tables 1.1 and 1.2, which cover tasks and events associated with different earned income skill checks. Finally, during the video today, we'll be talking about some archetypes that interact with the earned income activity, specifically the celebrity and dandy archetypes, which are found in the Advanced Player's Guide on pages 166 and 167 respectively. I will also be throwing a link in the video description to the earned income activity on Archives of Nethys, so that you can read up on it there. And I would like to give a huge shout out to two other content creators here on YouTube. First is the channel How It's Played, and second is the channel Goat King Dice, both of which have done some fantastic videos on the earned income activity in Pathfinder 2e. In particular, I really want to recommend Goat King Dice's video on this subject because he does a fantastic job of discussing some of the narrative implications of the earned income activity in Pathfinder 2e, and I really think you should check that out. So I'll be throwing links to both of those channels in the video description as well. I think you will find them quite helpful. But with all that out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so the earned income activity, as I've said, the rules for this can get a little bit complex and a little bit messy, and if you dive straight into them, it's easy to get lost in the nuance and granularity of just different aspects of this particular rule set. So let's take a breath, step back, and ask, what is the earned income activity all about? And as we've kind of said, earned income serves as a way of filling in the space in between adventures. Who is your character when they're not out battling dragons, when they're not out solving mysteries? When the fate of the nation or the world is not in their hands, what is your player character's 9-to-5 job? And kind of extending out from that is a discussion of what kind of life does your character lead? These questions can help fill in a lot of important details about the kind of character you're portraying and the lifestyle that they live. When we look at earning an income and the associated lifestyles, really what we're doing is filling in details about who our character is, and one of the most important things to realize when we discuss the earned income activity is these rules are helpful as long as they're doing that, and as with any rule in this game, when it's not helpful to the story, you can, and in many cases probably should, discard it. Paizo has given us a rule set for the earned income activity that allows for a lot of granularity, that allows for a lot of nuance, that allows this rule set to cover a wide variety of situations, and those situations can all have some important narrative purpose, but any rule in this game is there to serve the narrative, not hinder the narrative, and as a game master, you are well within your rights to set down a rule if it's not that big of a deal, narratively speaking. Downtime mode is a mode of play where you have the option of glossing over large sections of what's going on because it's not that important. And even when we talk about a rule set like earn income, that generalization will still apply. So as we go through the earn income activity, understand all of this is probably labeled optional at different points in time. But with all of that being said, let's ask the most basic question. How does a player character actually earn income? What's the process? Well, that process can be broken down into roughly 4 steps, although 2 of those steps are explicitly optional even at this stage in the game. Step number 1 is called find a task. By the way, Paizo uses the word task pretty much everywhere I would normally use the word job. So as I'm going through this, if the wording sounds a little bit weird, I do think it's a little bit weird, but Paizo calls the first step find a task. The second step, which is optional, is prepare for the task. The third step is to make the initial skill check to perform the task. And then the fourth, and again optional step, is to continue doing the task for an extended period of time. So, find a job, prep for the job, do the job, continue the job. Those are literally the 4 steps. But let's talk about what those mean. First up is find a job, or find a task. Basically, your character goes out and looks for some kind of work that they can do. This work is going to be based off the skills that your character is trained in, although the typical skills associated with this are going to be crafting, lore, or performance. We'll talk about that more here in a little bit. But your character goes out and tries to find a job that they are capable of doing. Finding a job really only has one important restriction, and that is that your character normally will not be able to find a job higher than the level of the settlement where they are trying to find that particular job. So if you are in a level 3 settlement, the highest level task that your character can find is, well, probably a level 3 task. Though if they wanted to, they could also look for lower level tasks as well. Now, we're not discussing settlements in depth here, but as a quick estimation, most villages will have a settlement level between 0 and 1, most towns will have a settlement level between 2 and 4, cities will be somewhere between 5 and 7, and metropolises or capital cities will roughly have a settlement level of 8 to 10. One of the things that means is that even if your character is higher level, they may not be able to find a job that is at their level if they are in a settlement that is too low level for them. So, a level 5 wizard may struggle to find level 5 work if they live in a village or a town. But once you complete the first step, which is finding a job, then you can proceed to the second optional step, which is preparing for the job. And this is something that is not always going to be necessary, but that might be helpful in certain situations. As a game master, you get to decide whether or not players can take some time to prep for a job. A simple example that is used in some of Paizo's publications is the idea of a character that wants to use the performance skill to earn an income. They find a job performing a play, and to prepare for that job, they spend some downtime studying the script in order to get ready. That prep time, if the character decides to use it, can serve as a reason for the game master to lower skill DCs for the job, or maybe modify some of the events that might be associated with the job if the game master is using those particular concepts. But once a character has found a job and prepared for the job, if necessary, you then move on to the third step, which is the initial skill check to perform the task or job. And this is pretty straightforward. Whatever skill the character is using, they roll the dice and find out how they're going to do. Now, it is worth noting, this is where the very important table 412 from the Pathfinder 2e core rulebook, is going to come into effect. This table is going to list the Earn Income Skill DC by level, and then have some different columns labeled Failed, Trained, Expert, Master, and Legendary. Essentially, in this case, as a storyteller, you would look at this table, figure out the level of the job in question, and then check the indicated skill DC against the outcome that your player rolled to determine how they did. If the character critically fails, they're fired, they don't get paid, and they're probably not finding a new job anytime soon. If a character fails, they keep their job and they do get paid, but they're going to get paid based on the failed column associated with whatever the level of the task is that they're trying to perform. Maybe the character is being lazy, maybe the character is just not getting along with their coworkers, maybe something just went disastrously wrong, but for one reason or another, that job's not doing very well, and they're not bringing home very much in terms of a paycheck. If the character succeeds on their skill check, instead what will happen is they will get paid an amount based on the level of the task and their proficiency at the skill in question. So, a level 2 character who is trained in a skill, if they succeed, will use the trained column at level 2 to determine what their base pay is. A level 6 job performed by someone with expert proficiency will use the indicated pay for an expert at a level 6 job, so on, so forth. If a character rolls a critical success, they will treat the level of the job as one higher and then still use whatever their proficiency is to determine the base pay. But on a failure, a success, or a critical success, basically what you're doing is checking the row and column to determine how much money they get paid for that initial check. Now, a couple of quick things to note here. Number one, please understand that the indicated DCs on table 412 are the suggested DC for tasks, jobs at that level. As a game master, you obviously have permission to adjust those DCs up and down. If a character spends time preparing for a job, then you can lower the DC. Or if something is going on that would make the job harder, you can raise the DC. But remember that those DCs are kind of the starting point for the conversation. The next thing I want to point out is Table 412 is essentially the pay per day scale for doing a job. So when a character makes that initial check, that's how much money they're getting paid for that day's worth of downtime. This brings us to the last optional step, which is once a character is getting paid, they can keep doing the job. If they like the job and the money that they're earning, then they have the option to continue that task or that job for as long as that job is available. Paizo notes that jobs might last for a few days, a few weeks, or could continue indefinitely for months, maybe even years. If a player wants to devote the appropriate amount of downtime to that job, they can continue to do so, and no further skill checks are necessary. Essentially, you just take whatever amount they rolled that very first day and multiply that amount times the total number of days worked to figure out what their overall income is going to be. Now, on the surface, Table 412 is pretty straightforward. Check the level of the task, check the appropriate proficiency column, and multiply out the results. Not that hard. But part of the problem with Table 412 is interpreting Table 412 in terms of what does that actually mean for a character who is earning that much money. And that is where I think it's handy to check the cost of living rules that Paizo gives us in the core rulebook. Now, these are certainly rough guidelines at best, but Paizo offers 4 different levels of living that a character might be at. Level 1, subsistence. Level 2, comfortable. Level 3, fine living. Level 4, extravagant living. You can actually check Table 616 and see the weekly, monthly, and yearly cost of maintaining that kind of lifestyle to understand what kind of income a character would need to fall into one of those 4 categories. However, those 4 categories are not labeled on this table, so let me save you a little bit of homework. A level 1 character living in a village using a skill that they are trained in to complete a level 1 job has a 50% chance or better of maintaining a comfortable lifestyle over the course of 1 year. However, if they fail that check, they could easily fall down to subsistence living. To move up to the kind of yearly income that would be associated with fine living, you would be looking at a level 10 character that lives in a capital or metropolis city and has expert level proficiency for the level 10 job that they are employed in. And I point that out because that's a pretty serious jump. From level 1 to level 9, trained and expert characters are probably going to be somewhere in the comfortable to high comfortable but not quite fine living level of income. It is when you get to experts in the largest of cities that you begin to see a scale of income associated with fine living. So what is necessary for extravagant living? Well, if we were going for master proficiency, a level 13 character completing a level 13 job would have a 50% chance or better of maintaining an extravagant lifestyle from the income that they earn. And if you've been paying attention, that gives us a little bit of a checkpoint in this whole conversation about earned income, because you may remember that when we were discussing villages, towns, cities, and metropolises, the scale of those settlements ran from level 0 to level 10. The kind of jobs that would earn an income associated with an extravagant lifestyle by Pathfinder 2e rules are not typically available inside a single city. Those kinds of jobs are probably going to be regional jobs where a character moves from town to town, city to city, county to county, maybe even nation to nation in order to maintain the kind of income necessary for that very lavish lifestyle. Simple jobs inside of most settlements may keep your character comfortable, but oftentimes you will have to travel around from location to location if you really want to make the big bucks. By the way, the earned income activity tables scales reasonably well to the expected character wealth that you would find when building characters. A level 3 character should roughly have enough wealth that they could maintain a comfortable lifestyle for a year with no additional income. A level 9 character likely has enough wealth to maintain a fine lifestyle for a year with no additional income, and a level 13 character will probably have enough wealth for an extravagant lifestyle for a year, again with no income coming in. So these earned income tables do scale reasonably well to expected character wealth, but this does help illustrate the fact that the life of the adventurer is often a better way to make income just because of how quickly a character can amass wealth if they survive the dangers associated with that lifestyle. Okay, so now we understand the process for earning income, the earned income table, and kind of the scale of what the numbers on that table means. Now let's dive a little more into the nuance of earning an income and how it interacts with different rules elements inside of the game. First up, let's talk about the skills that use the earn income activity. Pathfinder 2e notes that there are typically 3 skills that are going to be associated with earn income: crafting, lore, and performance. The most direct of these is the lore skill, and frequently the lore skill that your character might use is going to be based off of the background that your character has. So for example, if you got genealogy lore from your background, then one of the easiest ways for your character to earn income would be to use your genealogy lore skill, maybe in service to a noble house, maybe in service to a college or university, to research or produce documents associated with genealogy lore, and as a result you get paid for doing that work. The type of work that you do can very obviously scale based on your proficiency in the lore and the level that you have. So someone that is trained in alcohol lore at level 1 might serve as a bartender, while an expert might be a curator, and when you get all the way up to legendary in alcohol lore, you could have someone serving as the head of an international brewery. But generally speaking, any lore that a character possesses can potentially be translated into an earned income activity of some kind. I do think some lores work better than others when it comes to earn income, but lore is the most straightforward. Performance is quite similar to lore and works on a lot of the same levels, but with the important distinction that the level of the job that you do with performance is often going to be tied to the particular audience that you're performing for, separate from the level of the settlement. A street performer is a level 1 job, regardless of the size of city that you're in, is kind of what that means. The crafting skill can also be associated with the earn income activity, and in this case, this represents doing basic crafting jobs. Maybe you're making simple things like nails or horseshoes or 20,000 iron daggers in Skyrim. But the idea is that your character is making basic items that they can quickly sell or distribute in their community in order to complete that job. Pathfinder 2e typically assumes you're using one of these 3 skills when you earn income: lore, performance, or crafting. And while other skills might be possible for earning income, typically other skills are going to be at a higher DC. So for example, someone might be able to use an academic skill like Arcana or Religion in order to earn income, but the DCs for those jobs are going to be higher than they normally would be for a job of the same level, because those skills are not primarily focused on tasks that would be associated with earning an income. And this could apply to potentially a wide number of things. Using acrobatics as performing arts, or using nature to raise and train animals. All of these could be examples of earned income, but as a storyteller, you might need to fluctuate those DCs because they are not the typical skills. But to this point, this is one of the areas where earned income really starts to get granular and nuanced, and where the rules can change very rapidly depending upon a lot of different things in your character build. For example, diplomacy is not normally an earned income skill, but if you took the Bargain Hunter skill feat, you can use diplomacy for the earn income activity. Other skill feats like Legendary Performer, or even ancestry feats like the City Scavenger feat for goblins, can also modify the skills for earning an income, or maybe the DCs that are associated with earning an income. And in some cases, these options might allow you to do things like use earn an income to discount an item that you're trying to buy. There are a ton of options here, and the specifics of every option is going to be different. I think a lot of people who get hung up on earn an income are getting hung up on all of the different granular options that are available that modify what can earn an income or how earn an income is used. Try not to lose sight of the forest for all the trees when it comes to how feats interact with this particular activity. There are even archetypes like Celebrity and Dandy found in the APG that can modify the rules for earn income. There are so many options here that it can be a little dizzying, but that's why I think it's important. Step back, understand the big picture of what earn an income is, and then ask yourself, how does this feat, how does this class feature, how does this archetype option modify the base rules? As long as you take the time and keep that perspective, it's not too difficult to manage. Okay, so we've already gone over a lot, and I've certainly given you plenty to think about when it comes to the earn income activity, but there's a couple more layers that I would like to talk about before we leave this topic. So far, we've talked about the base rules for how you earn an income, and we've talked about the scale for earn an income, and then we moved on to some of the things that change the nuance of the rules when you earn an income. Now let's talk about things that reference earning an income, because this, I think, is another one of those tricky points in what Paizo has done. Sometimes rules modify earn an income, other times you're not actually earning an income, but rather a rule set is going to reference earn an income to help you understand the scale of what you're doing. And let's go ahead and talk about the giant elephant in the room on this one, which is crafting. Yes, this is about to get a little bit headache-inducing. We already talked about the fact you can use crafting to earn an income. That's true. But you can also use crafting to actually make things that you or other characters might use, and when you do that, you're not actually earning an income. But when you do that, you reference the earn an income table to determine how quickly you're going to be able to craft. Confused yet? In this instance, earn an income is not actually an activity that you're doing, but rather it's setting the scale for other activities. It's giving you a timeline, if you will, or at least a way to calculate the timeline for activities you might perform, such as crafting an item. Because you are not actually earning an income, things that modify the earn an income activity are not going to apply to that particular skill check. If you're crafting a magic sword, yes, you're referencing the earn an income table, but you're not actually earning an income, so anything that would modify that activity doesn't apply to crafting the sword. That's a point that is not necessarily readily apparent inside of the rules. Anything that references the earn an income table, but is not actually the earn an income activity, is going to have this restriction. The important thing to remember here is that reference back to the earn an income table is mostly there to help establish a scale, to help establish a time frame. That's why they do that. Now, crafting rules in Pathfinder 2e are, to put it mildly, contentious. And I do understand that there are some new takes on crafting that are going to be coming out in the near future in Pathfinder 2e. So for right now, I'm going to table any further conversation of the specifics of crafting items, because that's a bigger conversation, and that conversation is probably about to change. But just be aware that sometimes, inside of the game, a rule set may reference earn an income when you're not actually earning an income, and it's doing that because that's the easiest way to set a time scale for the activity. Another thing I want to discuss very briefly, and this is a trend for a lot of downtime activities in Pathfinder 2e, which is the simple but important rule that the majority of fortune, misfortune, and spell effects that you can find in Pathfinder 2e do not apply to downtime activities, and by extension, do not apply to earning an income. Yes, you may have a little bit of luck for a brief period of time, thanks to an event or a spell that your character has made use of, but oftentimes the scope of those effects is so limited that it's not going to apply to downtime activities, ergo, you're not allowed to use your fortune reroll on that initial skill check to perform a job. Just remember, the typical rule is if a buff does not apply through the whole duration of a task, you cannot apply that buff to the final skill check that is associated with that task. And that's not a specific rule to earning an income, that's just a general rule for downtime activities as a whole. Now, there is one thing introduced in the Gamemastery Guide in regards to earn an income that Paizo doesn't really offer a lot of mechanical details on, and that's the concept of tasks and events. A task is basically just a job description. You remember earlier I said Paizo uses the word task where I think the word job should be used? That's kind of the same thing here. In the Gamemastery Guide, you can find a large table containing sample tasks or sample jobs that as a Game Master you can offer your player characters inside of the game. That's pretty straightforward. The next one that's mentioned is events, and you can think of events as special episodes that might pop up in the midst of a job. Paizo doesn't give us any specific rules for how to use events, and it's pretty clear, even from their mention in the Gamemastery Guide, that events are intended to be an optional aspect of the earn an income activity. Basically, as a Game Master, you can ask yourself, do I want to include an event? And if I do, how will that event impact the final performance of the job? I would say it's probably a good idea to limit yourself to maybe one event per task or job that a PC is doing, and if you decide to include that event, decide ahead of time if the player is successful, how that's going to modify the final outcome. Does it lower the DC of the main skill check? Does it increase the amount of money the character might acquire? Really, as a Game Master, there's a lot of directions you can go here. Ultimately, you just want to look at events as a way to kind of spice up the story of the character's regular job. Is it something you always want to do? Probably not, but can you use it to insert some fun story moments? Most definitely. Now, coming to one of the last points on earning an income that's found in the Gamemastery Guide, there is one monetary subject that is specifically not covered by the earn an income activity, and that is investing. Paizo is very clear on this point. The earn an income activity is not intended to cover investing as a concept, and earn an income should definitely not be seen as a mechanic for investing inside of a game. Rather, Paizo advises if your players want to do investing, that you consider the narrative implications of that as a storyteller and decide when and how you want that investing to pay off inside of the story. Maybe your characters invest in a business early inside of a campaign, and then many levels later, that merchant returns to your players and offers them free or remarkably cheap treasures as a way of saying thank you for that initial investment that they made. Paizo doesn't give us hard and fast mechanics for managing investing, but rather just says, as a storyteller, ask yourself, how can I use this inside the story that's going to make sense? Earn an income is a very important rule set in Pathfinder 2e because of the different niches and nuances that earn an income connects to inside of the game. The basic version of earn an income, as long as you stay focused, is pretty simple and straightforward, but the rules for earn an income can get a little bit complicated just because it touches so many different other things and can be modified or influenced by different points inside the game. But let me turn the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts on earn an income, and what is your player character's day job? How does that impact their life as an adventurer? And how many dragon layers do you think they're going to need to raid in order to afford their kids college? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Both of those are linked in the video description. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.